Exactly 12 days after we moved into our architectural masterpiece in the hills, the man who sold it to us made a phone call that would have shattered an ordinary woman. He told me he had accidentally left a localized security node active in the wine cellar. He warned me that he had captured footage of my husband and his mother engaging in something utterly depraved in the dead of night. He instructed me to act completely normal, leave the property, and come to his secure location immediately. My name is Elena. I am 33 years old. For the better part of a decade, I have operated as a senior forensic data analyst and cyber intelligence director for a massive private intelligence firm in Los Angeles. Before I expose the horrifying depths of their midnight betrayal, let me know in the comments where you are tuning in from. Hit that like button and subscribe if you have ever had to systematically dismantle a narcissistic relative who mistook your silence for weakness. My entire professional existence is dedicated to tracking digital footprints, exposing corporate espionage, and neutralizing insider threats. Yet, the most aggressive malware I ever encountered was not coded into a foreign server. It was sitting at my own dining table when Victor, the retired military intelligence contractor who sold us the Cliffside compound, delivered that warning. My pulse did not elevate. Analysts do not panic. We isolate the breach and collect the data. I grabbed my handbag, told my husband Julian that I was heading to a late yoga class, and drove my car down the winding canyon roads into the cool California night. The sickening reality of our financial dynamic echoed in my mind as I navigated the sharp turns. Securing that sprawling glass and steel estate in the Pacific Palisades was supposed to be our ultimate milestone. I had liquidated a massive trust fund left to me by my late grandfather to cover 70% of the total purchase price. Julian, a 36-year-old luxury asset manager who wore imported silk suits that cost more than my college tuition, had begrudgingly contributed the remaining 30%. Despite my overwhelming financial leverage, Julian had orchestrated days of emotional manipulation before the closing. He accused me of harboring secret resentments and withholding true partnership until I relented and placed both of our names equally on the property deed. It was the most catastrophic blind spot of my life. When I stepped into Victor's secure facility, he bypassed all small talk. He simply swiveled his massive monitor toward me and hit play. The infrared camera feed displayed the reinforced door of my climate-controlled wine cellar. The timestamp glared in the corner, marking the time as 3 in the morning, the exact hour I had been deeply asleep. Heavily medicated by an herbal sleep aid Julian had lovingly brewed for me, on the glowing screen, my husband and my 64-year-old mother-in-law Beatrice were crouched in front of my biometric document vault. Beatrice is the kind of woman who wears oversized designer sunglasses indoors and treats service industry workers like invisible pieces of furniture. I watched with absolute clinical detachment as Julian used a high-grade biometric spoofing tool, something he clearly purchased off the dark web. To bypass my fingerprint lock, hurry up and pull the trust documentation and her life insurance binders, Beatrice hissed on the audio track. Her voice dripped with a predatory urgency I had never witnessed in her polite society persona. We need the exact routing numbers. I have them, Julian whispered back. The harsh white light of his phone illuminated his face as he rapidly photographed my most closely guarded financial records. Are you absolutely certain the notary can backdate the transfer? Beatrice demanded, snatching the papers from his hands to inspect them herself. Yes, Julian replied smoothly. I already established the offshore holding trust. We will bury the property surrender deed inside the annual compliance forms she has to sign for my firm. By the time I serve her with the divorce papers at the end of the month, this entire estate will belong to your trust. She will leave here with absolutely nothing. I sat in the glow of the monitor, watching the man I married smile in the dark as he plotted my total financial execution. They were not merely attempting to steal my money. They were actively conspiring to steal my grandfather's legacy, seize my home, and completely erase my financial independence. The sheer calculated malice was breathtaking. A normal wife might have collapsed in tears. She might have rushed home to scream, throw heavy objects, and demand the truth. But I am a forensic analyst. When an analyst detects a critical breach, they do not alert the hackers. They silently lock down the network, monitor the incoming traffic, and prepare a devastating counter-strike. "Victor," I said, my voice completely stripped of emotion. "Copy this raw footage to an encrypted solid-state drive and securely wipe the original from your local servers." Victor looked at me with a profound mixture of pity and professional respect. He handed me the drive, noting that the wipe was already complete. "A man willing to rob his wife in the shadows will be highly dangerous if you corner him in the broad daylight," he warned. "I have no intention of cornering him," I replied, dropping the metal drive into my bag. "I am going to remove the floor out from under him while he is looking the other way." I drove back up the canyon, my mind calculating 1,000 different variables. If Julian and Beatrice were arrogant enough to forge a real estate transfer, they were undoubtedly hiding larger, more systemic crimes. I needed direct access, undeniable leverage, and a ghost inside their inner circle. I did not simply want to keep my house. I wanted to legally and financially vaporize them so entirely that they would never manipulate another human being again. As I pulled my car through the security gates, I noticed a massive commercial logistics truck parked on my pristine driveway. 2 laborers were hauling a hideous, oversized faux Renaissance statue toward my front doors. Before I could even turn off the ignition, Beatrice stepped out onto the front terrace. She was holding a crystal glass of my expensive sparkling water, wearing the smug, self-satisfied grin of a parasite that had successfully latched onto a new host. The invasion had begun. I stepped out of my vehicle, letting the cool ocean breeze match the temperature of my demeanor. I walked up the stone steps, ensuring my face remained a perfect mask of polite confusion. "Beatrice," I said smoothly, "what exactly is happening here? Why is there a freight truck in our driveway?" Beatrice took a slow, theatrical sip from her glass, looking down at me as if I were a confused trespassing maid. "Oh, Elena, darling," she crooned with weaponized sweetness. "Did Julian forget to text you? My penthouse had a catastrophic mold issue discovered this morning. It is an absolute biohazard. Julian insisted that I take over the master guest wing until the contractors finish the abatement. This estate is simply massive. You will barely even notice my presence." I looked past her shoulder into the vast, minimalist foyer. The laborers were not bringing in temporary luggage. They were unloading dozens of heavy wooden crates, towering gilded mirrors, and suffocatingly gaudy antique furniture. This was not a temporary emergency relocation. This was a hostile occupation. It was the physical manifestation of the treacherous conversation I had just witnessed on Victor's monitor. She was establishing immediate residency to oversee the theft of my property. Julian sauntered out of the front door wearing a tailored cashmere sweater, looking entirely unbothered. "Hey, beautiful," he said, descending the steps to press a kiss to my cheek. I had to summon every ounce of my professional willpower to stop my body from physically recoiling. "My mother is going through a terrible ordeal with the penthouse," Julian said smoothly. "I knew you would welcome her with open arms. Family is the most important thing we have." "Right. Absolutely." I smiled, offering them a practiced, hollow expression. "Family means everything." I walked past them into the foyer and felt my breath catch in my throat. My late mother, a brillant glace artisan, had created a breathtaking custom-stained glass partition that served as the centerpiece of our entryway. It was my most cherished possession. It was completely gone. In its place stood a towering, tacky bronze fountain that looked like it belonged in a cheap casino. Beatrice, I said, keeping my tone dangerously even. Where is my mother's glass partition? Beatrice waved her hand dismissively, not even bothering to look at me. Oh, that fragile, colorful thing. It completely clashed with the modern aesthetic of this space. Elena, this is a luxury compound, not a bohemian art studio. I instructed the movers to load it into the dumpster out by the street. It was taking up entirely too much space. My bronze fountain brings a much better energy to the room. A blinding surge of pure adrenaline spiked behind my eyes. She had thrown my deceased mother's priceless art into a literal garbage bin. She did it deliberately to establish dominance, to mark her territory. And to test my breaking point, I glanced at Julian. He was leaning casually against the wall, swiping through emails on his phone, completely endorsing his mother's profound disrespect. My mother has an incredible eye for interior staging. Elena, Julian muttered without looking up. Just let her manage the decor. You are always buried in your data algorithms anyway. Let her breathe some life into this place. They wanted a hysterical reaction. They wanted me to scream, throw objects, and demand her eviction. Julian was intentionally provoking me so he could build a documented narrative that I was mentally unstable and hostile, laying the groundwork for his impending divorce strategy. I looked at the hideous bronze fountain. I looked at Beatrice's mocking, arrogant smirk, and then I did the most unnerving thing a targeted woman can do. I smiled back. You know what, Beatrice? You are completely right, I said, my voice dripping with artificial warmth. This foyer did need a bolder statement piece. Please, treat this entire estate as if it were your very own. Beatrice blinked, clearly thrown off balance by my immediate surrender. Her arrogance quickly smoothed over her confusion. I am so relieved you are being reasonable. Now be a darling and tell the laborers to move the Persian rugs into the east wing. I turned and walked up the floating glass staircase to my private home office. Locking the heavy door behind me, I did not shed a single tear for my mother's art. Grief is a luxury you cannot afford when you are actively preparing for war. I booted up my encrypted workstation, activated a secure, virtual, private network, and placed a call to a private contractor I frequently used for corporate espionage cases. Apex Surveillance Dynamics. A deep voice answered. I require a Tier 1 residential deployment, I stated. Pacing the length of my office, I am the primary deed holder of the target property. I need microacoustic sensors and pinhole high-definition lenses installed immediately. I want coverage in the kitchen, the dining room, all hallways, and the exterior perimeter. Everything must be hardwired, completely undetectable, and running on a closed cellular loop that never pings my home internet router. That is a highly invasive package. The contractor replied, for an expedited, discrète installation, you are looking at $15,000. Money is not a factor, I replied, staring out the window at Beatrice's logistics truck. I want your best operators here tomorrow morning at 8. My husband and his mother have a standing brunch reservation. You will have exactly 3.5 hours to wire the estate. Under California law, a property owner is legally permitted to install video surveillance in the common areas of their own home without the consent of other residents, provided there is no expectation of total privacy, like in a bathroom. I was completely within my legal rights. I was turning my home into a panopticon to capture the predators sleeping under my roof. For the next 48 hours, I played the role of the docile, oblivious, career-obsessed wife. I made Beatrice her specialty teas. I organized Julian's dry cleaning. I smiled blankly while they subtly degraded my wardrobe, my profession, and my personality. Beatrice made snide remarks about how a woman in her 30s should be focused on providing heirs rather than staring at computer screens. Julian would chuckle and agree, systematically undermining my presence in my own home. I absorbed every single insult without a flinch. While they mocked my quiet demeanor, Apex's elite technicians transformed my estate into a digital fortress. They embedded microscopic lenses inside the recessed lighting, the air conditioning vents, and the custom crown molding. Every whispered conspiracy, every arrogant laugh, every time Julian opened his laptop on the kitchen island, I was going to see and hear it in crystal clear resolution. The network went live on Wednesday night. Sitting in my locked office, I watched the camera feeds populate across my monitors. I watched Beatrice pour herself a massive glass of my vintage wine, pull out her phone, and dial a number. I isolated the audio frequency to listen. "Yes, Chloe," Beatrice was saying to Julian's sister on the phone. The foolish girl did not even put up a fight over the furniture. She is completely clueless. "I told Julian we are moving you and Marcus into the pool house by the weekend. Once we finally push her out, the whole family will live on this estate for free." I leaned back in my ergonomic chair, a cold, calculated smirk crossing my face. They were summoning more parasites. But what they did not realize was that bringing Chloe, a brilliant biomedical researcher whom they constantly belittled, into a house full of arrogant manipulators was not going to reinforce their army. It was going to hand me the ultimate Trojan horse. 3 days later, the second phase of the occupation commenced. I sat at the massive marble kitchen island, pretending to review a data security report while secretly monitoring my wireless earbuds. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I watched a cheap rental truck sputter up the driveway and park near the luxurious pool house. Out stepped Marcus, Julian's younger brother, wearing expensive sunglasses and carrying nothing. From the driver's side emerged Chloe, his wife. Chloe was a highly intelligent, soft-spoken scientist whose quiet dignity stood in stark contrast to the chaotic, arrogant energy of the family she had married into. Chloe began hauling heavy cardboard boxes out of the truck, her shoulders straining under the weight. Marcus stood nearby, complaining loudly about the California heat and checking his phone. Julian and Beatrice strolled out to the terrace to greet them. I cranked the volume on my exterior microphones. "Look who finally made it," Beatrice announced, swirling her midday wine. She offered Chloe a dismissive wave. "Clue, darling, the pool house is completely ready. It is a bit cramped compared to the main house, but beggars cannot be choosers in this economy." I knew the entire tragic backstory, though Julian thought it was a secret. Last year, Beatrice and Julian had aggressively manipulated Chloe into handing over $250,000 of her medical grant money, convincing her to place it into Julian's elite investment fund for a guaranteed high-yield return. Julian promised to double the money in 6 months so she could open her own research lab. Instead, the money completely vanished. Julian claimed it was swallowed by a volatile market correction. Now, Chloe and Marcus were essentially bankrupt, forced out of their apartment, and reduced to living as dependents on Beatrice's supposed generosity in my backyard. Julian leaned against the glass railing, watching Chloe struggle with a heavy box of textbooks. "Watch your step with that, Chloe," Julian sneered, his voice dripping with condescension. "That box of books is probably worth more than your entire research career right now." Try not to scuff the imported tiles. I already pay a fortune for landscaping. Marcus actually laughed at his own wife being publicly humiliated. Relax, Julian. She needs the workout. He joked. I watched Chloe through the glass. She did not say a single word. She kept her grip on the box, but I saw her jaw tighten so fiercely that a muscle twitched in her cheek. I recognized the profound, silent rage burning in her eyes. It was the heavy, suffocating fury of a brilliant woman who realized she was trapped in a cage with predators, completely stripped of her assets, and treated like unpaid labor by the very people who robbed her. She carried the box inside. She was enduring the abuse because she believed she had no money, no leverage, and nowhere else to go. I took a slow sip of my black coffee. In the intelligence community, we rely heavily on the concept of the insider threat. An insider threat is someone with legitimate access who possesses a deep-seated grievance against the organization. Chloe was not my enemy. She was the perfect, highly motivated operative I needed to destroy Julian. Later that night, the compound was completely silent. Julian had gone to Beverly Hills for a supposed late client dinner, which my GPS tracking script confirmed was actually a high-end luxury casino. Beatrice was passed out in the guest wing after her third bottle of wine. I walked out the back doors, carrying 2 mugs of hot tea, and moved quietly across the manicured lawn toward the pool house. The lights were off, but I could see a silhouette sitting on the edge of the pool deck. It was Chloe. She was staring blankly into the water, looking completely defeated. The ocean breeze gets freezing up here, I said softly. Stepping into her line of sight, Chloe jumped slightly, hastily wiping a tear from her cheek and throwing up a defensive "Ensem." Polite smile. Elena. Hi. I am so sorry. I did not mean to intrude on the main deck. Marcus is snoring. I just needed to breathe for a minute. We will be out of your space as soon as I can secure a new lab grant. I sat down on the teak lounge chair next to her and handed her a mug. Drink this, I said gently. You look completely exhausted. She took the mug hesitantly. Thank you, she whispered, the warmth seeming to crack her defensive shell just a fraction. I really appreciate you letting us crash here. Elena, I know it is a huge imposition. Things have been a total nightmare recently. I know all about the grant money. Chloe, I stated flatly. She froze completely. The mug stopped halfway to her lips. She stared at me, a flash of deep humiliation crossing her face. Julian told you, she asked, her voice trembling. Julian tells me absolutely nothing but lies, I replied, dropping my voice to a conspiratorial whisper. He lies to me. He lies to you. And Beatrice directs the entire performance to keep us all under her control. I turned and looked Chloe dead in the eyes. Chloe, you are a brilliant biomedical scientist. You analyze complex data for a living. Do you genuinely believe that a senior luxury asset manager simply lost $250,000 in a routine market fluctuation without ever providing you a single official transaction receipt? Chloe swallowed hard. The polite facade shattered, replaced by a raw, desperate anger. I demanded the audit logs, she whispered, looking nervously toward the pool house to ensure Marcus was asleep. I asked for the transaction history. Julian called me financially incompetent and said I was insulting the family trust. Marcus sided with him. He told me to stop embarrassing him in front of his successful brother. They stole your grant money. Chloe, I said, delivering the cold truth she already knew, but was too gaslit to accept. Just like they are currently conspiring to steal this entire estate from me. Her eyes widened in the dark. What do you mean, steal the estate? Your name is on the legal deed. For now, I replied, They are fabricating a property surrender document to transfer my equity into a shell company controlled by Beatrice. They are planning to blindside me with divorce papers and an eviction notice on the exact same day. Chloe let out a shaky breath that sounded like a suppressed scream. She pressed the palms of her hands against her eyes. My God, they are absolute psychopaths. What are you going to do? You need to call the police. I am a forensic data analyst. Chloe, I said, a dangerous, razor-sharp smile forming on my face. I do not call the police. I build the federal indictment myself. I am compiling an inescapable case of wire fraud, forgery, and embezzlement. But Julian keeps his physical offline, drives locked in his home office. I need a ghost. I need someone who lives on this property. Someone Julian dismisses as completely harmless. To walk into that office and plant a data siphon on his desktop while I keep him occupied. I held out my hand toward her. Help me ruin them. Chloe, help me extract the financial logs in 40 of Lastaveri. If we can prove the embezzlement, I absolutely guarantee I will intercept your stolen grant money from his accounts before the federal authorities freeze the rest. Chloe looked at my hand. She looked back at the main house, where the people who had mocked her intelligence and stolen her future were sleeping comfortably. The fear vanished from her expression, replaced by the icy, calculated focus of a scientist ready to dissect a specimen. She reached out and grasped my hand tightly. Tell me exactly what the protocol is. Under the cover of darkness. I briefed Chloe on the initial phase of the operation. I revealed the network of hidden cameras, assuring her that Julian and Beatrice were entirely unaware of the surveillance. We installed a highly encrypted messaging protocol on our secondary devices, ensuring Julian's mediocre tech skills could never detect our communications. Chloe agreed to play the role of the subservient, depressed sister-in-law perfectly, becoming invisible background noise so she could move freely through the estate. By 8 the next morning, Beatrice was already shouting demands from the kitchen. Sitting in my locked office, I monitored the camera feeds. Julian was pacing the kitchen island, aggressively shouting into his phone about a delayed wire transfer, completely ignoring his mother. This was our window of opportunity. I sent a single encrypted dot to Chloe's phone. Downstairs, Chloe walked through the terrace doors, carrying a basket of folded laundry. She politely mentioned to Beatrice that she was organizing the linen closets near Julian's office, playing perfectly into their narrative that she was nothing more than domestic help. Beatrice shooed her away, too busy complaining about the quality of my espresso beans. I watched Chloe on the hallway monitor. She moved with the silent precision of a trained operative. When Julian stepped out onto the terrace to yell louder on his call, I tapped the microphone icon on my secure app. Speaking directly into Chloe's hidden earpiece, "The target sector is clear." I whispered, "Enter the office. The primary workstation tower is mounted beneath the mahogany desk." Chloe slipped inside, leaving the door cracked to maintain the illusion of innocence. Kneeling beneath the desk, she reached behind the massive computer tower. She produced the specialized USB data siphon I had programmed the night before, a piece of corporate espionage hardware designed to silently bypass operating system permissions and clone hard drives in the background. Payload deployed, Chloe murmured, her voice barely registering on the mic. I held my breath, watching the data extraction progress bar creeping across my terminal screen. Julian was still on the terrace, loudly threatening a client. His arrogance was his biggest vulnerability. He conducted massive fraudulent operations openly in my kitchen. 40 seconds passed, then 80. The progress bar hit 90%. Suddenly, Julian ended his call and marched aggressively toward his office door. Abort. I snapped into the microphone. Target approaching. Pull the drive immediately. Chloe yanked the small silver drive, concealing it in her palm. She instantly grabbed a stack of towels and turned toward the linen cabinet, just as Julian pushed the door open. "What the hell are you doing in my workspace?" Julian demanded, his voice laced with aggressive suspicion. "Beatrice asked me to restock the guest towels." Chloe replied smoothly, her voice shaking just enough to sound genuinely intimidated. "I am just finishing up." Julian scoffed, dropping into his expensive leather chair. "Just finish it and get out. I have actual million-dollar deals to manage." Chloe nodded subserviently and exited the room. 10 minutes later, a soft knock echoed at my office door. I opened it to find Chloe standing there. She opened her hand, revealing the silver drive. I took it with a silent nod of profound respect. The Trojan horse had successfully breached the gates. I locked my door, sat at my primary decryption terminal, and plugged the drive in. It was time to dissect the monster. Julian was driven by massive ego, which meant his security hygiene was predictably atrocious. He utilized variations of his college fraternity, his favorite luxury car brand, and his mother's birth year. My brute force decryption algorithm sliced through his password manager in under 5 minutes. Once inside, the complete architecture of his financial life cascaded across my dual monitors in a waterfall of raw financial, unencrypted data, starting with our joint accounts. I cross-referenced the digital ledgers against the physical statements he had mailed to the house. A wave of cold fury washed over me. Julian had been forging the banking PDFs for over 16 months. He systematically drained our massive shared savings, siphoning thousands of dollars a week into a phantom holding account registered under a fake corporate entity. He had completely decimated our emergency reserves, labeling the withdrawals as property taxes and luxury vehicle maintenance. But that was merely the shallow end of the pool. Analysts do not just watch where the money stops. We track how it moves. Tracing the digital routing hashes from his phantom account, I uncovered the final destination. Julian had established an offshore banking presence in the Bahamas. He was actively stockpiling liquid cash, preparing to leave me trapped with a massive mortgage, zero savings, and fabricated marital debt. Digging deeper, I located a compressed folder labeled with Chloe's maiden name. Inside were the raw wire transfer receipts for the $250,000 she had given him. Julian had never lost that money in a market crash. The transaction logs proved he never invested a single dime into any legitimate fund. The very second Chloe's grant money hit his brokerage account, Julian diverted it entirely. I followed the digital breadcrumbs. He did not send it to the Bahamas. He wired it directly into a highly illegal, offshore cryptocurrency gambling syndicate. He used his sister-in-law's entire future to place massive, reckless bets on unregulated digital coin margins. The bets evaporated in less than 3 days. He incinerated Chloe's life work on a digital roulette wheel and then smoothly blamed the global economy. The scale of his sociopathy was dizzying, painting a vivid portrait of a man completely out of control. A broker making frantic, high-leverage illegal bets is almost always trying to plug a much larger, catastrophic hole. I leaned into the monitor, opening his corporate client files. If he was willing to obliterate his family to cover his tracks, what was he doing with the millions entrusted to him by his celebrity clients? The answer I found in the final unencrypted folder was a federal crime of epic proportions. As the files populated, a hidden partition materialized. It was labeled with a string of random characters, a pathetic attempt to hide the payload. I executed the files, and a sprawling network of corporate escrow ledgers flooded my screen. These were the highly confidential portfolios from Julian's luxury asset management firm. I shifted entirely into my professional forensic mindset. I expected to see skimmed commissions or inflated management fees. What I uncovered was a desperate, collapsing Ponzi scheme. Julian managed liquidity for extremely high net worth individuals, mostly actors, athletes, and foreign investors who rarely scrutinize their quarterly statements. Instead of holding their funds in secure, conservative escrow accounts as legally mandated, Julian had been systematically draining their liquid assets. He funneled massive sums into a master shadow account that operated entirely outside of his firm's compliance network. He used this shadow fund to finance an obsession with underground high-stakes poker and reckless real estate flipping. He was treating his clients' generational wealth as his own personal piggy bank. The transaction logs painted a horrifying reality. Julian was hemorrhaging cash. When his illegal bets failed, the resulting deficits were massive. To prevent the firm's automated compliance software from flagging the missing funds, he siphoned even more money from dormant client accounts to cover the gaps. The deficit was staggering. He had not just burned Chloe's money. He had embezzled over $9 million of client funds in the past 2 years. To hide this catastrophic reality, Julian utilized the exact same forgery tactics he used on me. He manipulated the accounting software to generate entirely fake quarterly returns. His clients believed they were earning steady profits. In reality, their portfolios were entirely empty, holding nothing but fabricated numbers. The sheer audacity was breathtaking. He was committing wire fraud, aggravated identity theft, and massive securities fraud every single day. The second the Federal Bureau of Investigation or the Securities and Exchange Commission caught a glimpse of this data, Julian was looking at 20 years in a federal penitentiary. Suddenly, the bizarre invasion of my house made perfect, chilling sense. Beatrice moving in, the rush to secure the property surrender deed, the constant psychological pressure. I leaned back in my chair, the variables finally aligning into a clear, terrifying equation. Julian knew his Ponzi scheme was on the verge of a catastrophic implosion. A single audit, or one celebrity requesting a massive cash withdrawal, would trigger the collapse. When the federal agents inevitably raided his firm, every asset tied to his name would be frozen and seized to pay back the victims. Our compound, the masterpiece I had paid for almost entirely with my grandfather's clean money, was the only untainted, massive asset he had left. Beatrice was not just trying to steal my house out of spite. She and Julian were executing a desperate asset protection protocol. By forcing me to sign the surrender deed, they intended to transfer the estate into Beatrice's offshore trust, completely shielding it from federal seizure. They were deliberately setting me up to be left homeless and financially ruined. While they secured a luxury fortress to ride out the storm, I felt no panic. I felt only the icy, hyper-focused clarity of an analyst locking in a target. I began systematically ripping the data from the clone drive to my secure servers. I exported the routing hashes, the forged portfolios, and the damning internal communications Julian had stupidly saved. I created heavily encrypted archives of every single fraudulent wire transfer, tagging them with the specific federal statutes he had violated. I was no longer preparing for a divorce. I was building a comprehensive federal prosecution dossier that would ensure Julian left my property in handcuffs. As I finalized the encryption process, a small recurring charge on Julian's personal statement caught my eye. It was a premium credit monitoring subscription, but the associated account number did not match his known credentials. I ran the digits through my terminal. My breath stopped as the results populated. The account was directly tied to my personal Social Security number. The betrayal did not stop at his firm. The monster I married was actively destroying my identity. I immediately logged into a secure portal to access my annual credit reports. As a corporate intelligence director, maintaining a flawless credit score was a strict requirement for my security clearance. If my credit collapsed, my firm would legally terminate my employment. Julian knew this. I entered my credentials and requested reports from all 3 bureaus. The dashboard loaded, and I felt my blood pressure plummet. My pristine 815 credit score was gone. The dial had crashed into the dark red, hovering at a dismal 490 TALM. Red alert banners covered the screen. Warning of severe delinquencies. My fingers flew across the keyboard. There were 4 massive, high-yield credit lines opened in my name over the past 8 months. A platinum travel card maxed out at $60,000. A luxury retail account maxed at $40,000. 2 personal signature loans totaling $80,000 ex-Persinix and Diversend. A total of $180,000 of toxic, unsecured debt was chained to my identity. Every account was maxed out and 90 days past due. I pulled the transaction histories. Julian was not just funding his gambling deficit, he was financing a secret, lavish lifestyle. The cards were littered with charges for 5-star hotels in Miami, exotic car rentals, and luxury jewelry. He was likely funding affairs and living like a billionaire, all while permanently anchoring the financial destruction to my name. The cruelty was absolute. This was calculated financial assassination. By destroying my credit score and burying me in debt, Julian was ensuring that when he dropped the divorce papers, I would be completely paralyzed. I would not be able to rent an apartment, hire a decent attorney, or even maintain my corporate job. He wanted me entirely defenseless. He thought he was playing a brilliant game against a naive wife. He severely underestimated the intelligence of the woman sitting across the board. I switched to my forensic software and ripped the metadata from the credit applications. Criminals always leave a digital trail. And Julian was arrogant and sloppy. The IP addresses matched our home network perfectly. However, the billing address was a private mail drop 2 towns over. I ran a quick background check on the mail drop. The registered owner was Beatrice. They had worked in perfect tandem. Julian opened the accounts using my social security number, and Beatrice intercepted all the physical mail, so I never saw a single overdue notice. I downloaded every timestamp, application log, and IP address. I merged this evidence into the federal vault. Identity theft carries mandatory minimum prison sentences. My hands were completely steady as I placed a hard security freeze on all my credit profiles. I initiated a silent fraud alert through a backdoor channel available to intelligence directors, flagging the accounts for federal review without triggering automated emails to the account holder. Julian would have no idea the trap was closing. I closed my laptop, plunging the office into shadows. They looked at me and saw nothing but a resource to consume and discard. But a resource is passive. I was an apex predator in the digital world. The reconnaissance phase was complete. I had the complete map of their criminal network. Now, it was time to assemble my strike team. It was time to look Chloe in the eyes and forge a blood pact. I slipped out the back door into the cool night air. The main house was dark. I walked to the pool house and knocked lightly. Chloe opened the door, dressed in an oversized hoodie. Looking exhausted, she stepped aside, letting me into the small kitchenette. We stood in silence. I reached into my jacket, pulled out a thick manila envelope, and dropped it on the counter. "What is this?" she asked. "The absolute truth." I replied, "I breached the ledgers. Open it." Chloe hesitated, terrified of confronting the reality of her ruined life. She broke the seal and pulled out the documents. The top page was the wire transfer receipt for her $250,000. "Look at the routing numbers," I instructed. "Look at where your money actually landed." She flipped the page. Her eyes scanned the highlighted text. "This is a crypto exchange account." She whispered. "Julian told me he put it in a medical tech bond. This says the account belongs solely to him." "Keep reading," I said. "Turn to the third page." The third sheet was the transaction log from the unregulated exchange. It detailed the exact 3 days following her deposit. "He never invested your grant." "Chloe," I explained, my voice cold and steady, "he took your entire future and threw it into a highly leveraged, illegal digital coin gamble." The market crashed instantly. The position was liquidated. Your money was not lost in a standard market dip. It was incinerated because your brother-in-law is a degenerate addict playing with stolen funds. Chloe dropped the papers. She gripped the edge of the counter so tightly her knuckles turned white. Her chest heaved as adrenaline and profound grief flooded her system. She had sacrificed years of her life working in underfunded labs to earn that grant money. Julian and Beatrice had convinced her to surrender her security, mocking her intelligence the entire time. "They played me," she breathed, her voice shaking with pure, unadulterated fury. "Marcus told me I was stupid for questioning his brother. He knew. Marcus had to know. Marcus is complicit through willful ignorance." I replied, "He prefers the comfort of his family's wealth over the integrity of your marriage. They look at you the exact same way they look at me. Chloe, we are not family. We are fuel. Julian is currently trying to steal my estate and has destroyed my credit score with fraudulent loans. They want us both utterly broken." Chloe turned to face me. The soft-spoken scientist was gone. The woman standing before me possessed a terrifying, dangerous clarity. "What is the next phase of the protocol?" she asked. "I need to finalize the federal evidence against Julian," I explained. "I have the digital logs from his home network, but the FBI will require physical corroboration from his corporate terminal to prove the embezzlement of the celebrity funds. If I try to access his firm's network remotely, their enterprise firewalls will flag the intrusion. I need a physical breach." Chloe's eyes narrowed. "Julian's firm in Beverly Hills is highly secure. You need biometric clearance just to access the elevator bank." "I know," I said, "but you are currently employed as the independent ergonomic health consultant redesigning the lab space for his firm's new health initiative. Julian bragged about getting you that pity contract last month. You have temporary vendor clearance. You have a legitimate reason to be walking those halls after hours." I pulled a sleek black external drive from my pocket and placed it on the counter. "This is an automated data extraction node. It runs a silent script. I need you to walk into Julian's corner office while you are doing your health assessments. You plug this into the back of his primary terminal. It will take exactly 4 minutes to clone the master escrow ledgers. Then you remove it and walk away." Chloe stared at the device. It was the key to her vengeance. If caught, she faced massive legal trouble. If successful, we possessed the nuclear codes to annihilate them. "If I do this," Chloe said, her voice dropping to a deadly whisper, "I want your absolute guarantee on one thing. When the federal agents freeze his accounts, you ensure my grant money is legally separated from the asset forfeiture pool. I want my life back before the government takes the rest. You have my absolute word." I promised, locking eyes with her, "You will get every single penny back. And Marcus will walk away with nothing." Chloe reached out and took the drive. The pact was sealed. I returned to my office and prepared for the psychological warfare Julian was about to unleash. I unlocked my bottom drawer and retrieved a small, velvet-lined box. Inside was a specialized tool utilized in corporate counter-espionage. It looked exactly like a premium, heavy-barrel fountain pen. However, the chemical composition of the ink was highly volatile. It was a proprietary polymer that reacted to ambient room temperature. Within exactly 12 hours of application, the chemical bonds would completely evaporate, leaving absolutely no microscopic trace on the paper. A signature rendered with this pen would simply cease to exist, rendering any legal document entirely void. I placed the pen in the center of my desk. The trap was set. The opportunity arrived the very next evening. I was reviewing legitimate intelligence files when Julian marched down the hallway. He pushed my door open without knocking, clutching a massive, chaotic stack of paperwork. He loosened his tie, projecting the image of a stressed, exhausted provider. "Hey, beautiful," he sighed, dropping the heavy stack directly onto my keyboard. "I am completely swamped. My compliance officer is threatening to penalize us over our joint tax disclosures. I need these signed and notarized by tomorrow morning, or we face a massive fine." I looked at the stack. It was easily 80 pages thick. A chaotic mess of tax forms and dense legal jargon designed to induce immediate eye fatigue. This is a textbook predatory tactic. Criminals bury the lethal payload deep within a mountain of boring documents, relying on exhaustion to secure a blind signature. That is a massive stack for a standard filing. "Julian," I said smoothly, "do you want me to read through these tonight and give them back in the morning?" Julian's body language instantly tightened with manufactured impatience. "Elena, I literally just said compliance needs them tomorrow. I have to scan them tonight. It is just the standard asset declarations. Please do not make a massive production out of this. I am exhausted." He leaned over my desk. A deliberate physical intimidation tactic designed to rush me. "Of course," I replied, my voice completely serene. "Show me where to sign." I picked up the heavy fountain pen from my desk. Julian let out a dramatic sigh of relief. He leaned over the stack, rapidly flipping through the pages. "Sign here," he instructed, pointing to a standard tax line. I signed it. The black ink flowed perfectly. He flipped another 20 pages, and here, I signed again. He flipped rapidly, the sound of paper filling the room. Then he paused. He turned to page 52, his hand casually obscuring the header. "Just one more right here at the bottom," he muttered, trying to sound bored. My trained eyes scanned the visible text instantly. It was a quitclaim property deed, a legally binding instrument that irrevocably surrenders ownership of real estate. Buried in a tax filing was the exact document designed to steal my compound. The grantee listed was Beatrice's offshore limited liability company. Julian tapped the signature line. "Right there. Elena, let's finish this." I looked up at him. He was holding his breath, his eyes wide with fake innocence, masking the predatory gleam beneath. He actually believed he had outsmarted a senior intelligence director. I offered him a warm, trusting smile. "Anything to help you out, honey," I said. I pressed the tip of the vanishing ink pen to the thick paper and signed my name with an elegant flourish, pressing firmly to make it look definitive. "Perfect," Julian gasped, snatching the document so fast he nearly ripped it. A genuine, euphoric grin broke through his exhausted facade. "Thanks. Beautiful. You are a lifesaver. I will handle the filing." He practically sprinted out of my office. I sat in the silence, listening to his rapid footsteps head toward Beatrice's wing. They were probably celebrating their flawless victory right now, believing they had just stolen a multi-million-dollar asset for the cost of a few printed pages. I clicked the pen shut and locked it away. Julian would undoubtedly hand the document to Beatrice, who would rush to the county recorder's office in the morning to file the deed. But by the time the clerk opened that file, exactly 12 hours would have passed. Beatrice would hand the government official a completely blank piece of paper. They thought they were playing a brilliant game of chess. They had no idea I owned the board. The next morning, Chloe executed her strike. I sat in my kitchen, sipping espresso, while Chloe packed her ergonomic measurement tools into her bag. She wore a crisp blazer and a vendor ID badge. We exchanged a single browned end quote. Imperceptible nod before she left. Downtown in Beverly Hills. Chloe bypassed the security turnstiles with her vendor clearance. She rode the elevator to the executive floor. My secure app buzzed. She was in. Knowing Julian attended a mandatory firm-wide strategy session every Thursday at 10, Chloe timed her approach perfectly. She walked into Julian's corner office. Leaving the door cracked, she knelt beneath the desk, plugged the black extraction drive into the terminal, and the silent script launched. It bypassed the firewalls and began cloning the master escrow ledgers and offshore routing hashes. She stood up, pretending to measure the distance between the monitor and the chair. 3 minutes passed. The progress bar hit 99%. The drive chirped silently. Complete. Chloe pulled the drive, slipped it into her pocket, and turned just as Julian pushed the door open. "What are you doing in my office?" Julian demanded, his voice dropping to a threat. Chloe did not flinch. She held up her measuring tape. "The managing director asked me to standardize the monitor heights across all executive suites." She lied smoothly. "I am done now." Julian scoffed. "Just do not touch anything on my desk. I have celebrity clients coming in, and I do not want the place looking like a clinic." "Understood." Chloe smiled, walking out with the weapon that would end his life as a free man. We met hours later at a loud, crowded cafe. She slid the drive across the table under a napkin. I took it, returned home, and plugged it into my terminal. I spent the next 6 hours doing what I do best. I followed the digital blood trail. The corporate data perfectly corroborated the initial fragments. Julian had embezzled over $9 million from 4 celebrity escrow accounts. He funneled the cash through Bahamian shell companies, masking the theft with forged quarterly reports, and incinerated every dollar on illegal crypto gambling. The evidence was absolute. I had the timestamps, routing numbers, forged signatures, and internal memos where Julian actively lied to his compliance team. I opened a heavily encrypted portal directly to the Cybercrimes Division of the Federal Bureau of Investigation and the Enforcement Wing of the Securities and Exchange Commission. I attached a meticulously organized dossier detailing wire fraud, securities fraud, and aggravated identity theft. I also filed the official whistleblower application, ensuring I would receive a massive percentage of whatever assets the government seized. I typed a clinical summary highlighting that Julian was an extreme flight risk with offshore accounts. I attached the cloned drive contents, hovered over the submit button, and clicked. The machinery of federal justice was officially in motion, and it was a beast Julian could not manipulate. The countdown to their annihilation had begun. The next morning, the atmosphere in my house shifted to a triumphant occupation. Beatrice stood in the kitchen, wearing a sweeping silk robe, slapping a stack of heavy, gold-foiled envelopes onto the counter. "We are hosting an elite charity gala this Saturday," Beatrice announced, not looking at me. "Julian is inviting the senior partners from his firm and his highest net worth clients. I am inviting the entire board of my art foundation. It is time we properly introduce this estate to our circle." I picked up an envelope. It read, "You are invited to celebrate the new residents of the Sterling family." They were already erasing me. Fully believing the forged deed was currently securing their ownership, Julian strolled in, adjusting his cuffs. "It is going to be the event of the season." Elena. He boasted. My managing partner is coming. Mom is going to act as the primary hostess. You can help out behind the scenes. Help out behind the scenes. Beatrice scoffed, glaring at me. Elena is going to manage the catering staff. Cancel your computer meetings. The chandeliers need dusting. The silver trays need polishing. And you will coordinate the valet. You are going to be very busy. She was deliberately demoting me to a domestic servant to break my spirit before Julian dropped the divorce papers. I looked at their smug, victorious faces and felt a surge of clinical joy. They were meticulously gathering every single important person in their lives into one room. They were assembling the exact audience I needed to witness their total destruction. I will handle all the preparations. Beatrice, I said, my voice perfectly obedient. I will make sure this is a night nobody will ever forget. Beatrice smiled cruelly. See that you do. And wear something completely subdued. Gray. Preferably. It will help you blend in when you are clearing the plates. For the next 4 days, my home became a psychological torture chamber. Beatrice forced me to scrub the hardwood floors and polish 80 pieces of antique silver until my hands ached. She criticized my floral arrangements and demanded I fetch her wine. I complied with every absurd demand. Playing the broken wife flawlessly, Julian was too busy buying expensive watches to notice that his wife was operating with the terrifying calm of an executioner. They had no idea that while Beatrice made me scrub the grout, I was receiving encrypted confirmations from the FBI. They had no idea federal agents were silently securing subpoenas. Saturday arrived. By 6 p.m, the estate was transformed. A massive LED projector screen was set up near the infinity pool, displaying looping architectural photos. Catering staff in crisp uniforms circulated with champagne. Beatrice cornered me in the hallway, thrusting a cheap, shapeless gray dress into my hands. Put this on, she ordered. I do not want Julian's partners confused about who is actually running this household. I put on the dress, pulled my hair back tightly, and removed all my jewelry. I looked like a ghost, entirely invisible to the millionaires arriving at my home. I walked back downstairs as the heavy security gates opened. Luxury sports cars and armored SUVs flooded the driveway. The tension was electric. Beatrice greeted guests with theatrical kisses, boasting about the estate as if she owned it. Julian held court near the fire pit, laughing loudly with senior executives. I moved silently through the crowd, collecting empty glasses. I occasionally glanced out the massive front windows toward the street. The road was dark, but I knew what was waiting. A fleet of unmarked black vehicles was parked just out of sight. Waiting for the operational trigger, the guests were drinking to Julian's success, completely unaware the ground was about to crack open. Julian was surrounded by his managing partners. It is all about aggressive diversification. Julian bragged loudly. You anticipate the market shifts before the algorithms do. That is how I secured this property. When you know how to leverage assets, real estate like this is a drop in the bucket. The executives nodded, praising a man who had secretly gutted their firm's credibility. Across the room, Beatrice was equally intoxicated by her delusion. She spoke loudly to a group of wealthy women. I simply had to step in and purchase the property. Beatrice sighed dramatically. Julian works so hard, but his wife lacks the capacity to manage a budget. She nearly drove them into foreclosure. I bought the estate outright to protect my son. The women murmured sympathetically, casting disgusted glances at me in my gray dress. I simply smiled and collected their napkins. I caught sight of Chloe standing near the kitchen, dressed sharply, holding a glass of water. Marcus was nowhere near her. Chloe and I exchanged a fleeting look. She tapped her glass twice. The operation was on schedule. I walked toward the front windows and looked out. A massive black SUV rolled silently past the gates, headlights completely off, and parked flush against the curb. Blocking the exit, a second vehicle blocked the opposite side. The street was entirely sealed. More vehicles pulled up. Men and women in heavy tactical vests stepped out, even in the dim light. The yellow letters on their backs were unmistakable. SB. The SEC Enforcement Division was right beside them. They moved with terrifying precision. Setting up a tactical perimeter, they were treating my home like a corporate crime stronghold. Inside, Beatrice clapped her hands, demanding attention. "Everyone, please," she called out, "gather around the main terrace. My son has a very special announcement regarding the future of this estate." The elite crowd shifted toward the pool deck. Julian stepped up onto a slightly elevated stone platform, holding a fresh glass of champagne in his right hand. I knew exactly what was concealed in the inner pocket of his tuxedo jacket: the divorce papers and the eviction notice. I placed my silver tray down, smoothed my gray dress, and walked slowly to the front of the crowd. I wanted a perfect view of his face. Julian tapped a silver spoon against his crystal flute. The sharp ringing silenced the crowd. He looked like the perfect corporate prince, preparing to ruin a woman he never loved. "Thank you all for joining us," Julian began, projecting his voice effortlessly. "Building wealth is about vision, discipline, and recognizing when a fundamental restructuring is absolutely necessary to preserve the core asset." His managing partners nodded in solemn agreement. "As many of you know, managing risk is the foundation of my career," Julian continued, his tone shifting to manufactured regret. "Sometimes the greatest risks are not in the global markets, but inside our own homes." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Eyes shifted toward me. I did not shrink away. I stepped forward into the light. "Marriage is built on trust," Julian said, looking directly at me with cold, dead eyes. "But trust requires competence. Unfortunately, Elena has demonstrated a catastrophic inability to manage our finances. Her reckless spending nearly drove this estate into foreclosure." A sharp gasp echoed from a socialite. Julian was airing marital grievances at a high society gala. A massive breach of etiquette designed to destroy my reputation permanently. "Thankfully," Julian announced, gesturing to his mother. Beatrice stepped in. Through her immense generosity, she has officially purchased this entire estate. She saved me from financial ruin. Let us raise a glass to the new permanent owner of this magnificent home." Polite applause echoed across the deck. Beatrice beamed in mock humility. "But the restructuring does not end with real estate," Julian said. He handed his glass to his mother and reached into his jacket. Pulling out a thick manila envelope, the room fell into absolute silence. "Elena, step forward," Julian commanded with the authority of an executioner. I walked slowly through the parted crowd. The wealthy guests stepped back as if failure were contagious. I reached the platform and looked up at my husband. He held out the heavy envelope. Inside are formal divorce proceedings. Julian declared loudly, "There is also a legally binding 30-day eviction notice. Because this property now belongs entirely to Beatrice's trust, you have no legal right to remain here. I expect you to gather your belongings and vacate the guest room immediately." I reached out and took the envelope. Beatrice stepped down, leaning in close. "This is my house now, Elena," she hissed with pure malice. "We gave you every opportunity, and you proved yourself inadequate. Do not make a hysterical scene. Pack your cheap clothes and walk out quietly." "Rachel." "No. Wait." Marcus stood near the bar. Openly smirking, Chloe remained frozen near the kitchen. Waiting, Julian crossed his arms. Expecting his colleagues to validate his ruthless efficiency, he had stripped me of my dignity in less than 3 minutes. I stood holding the envelope. I did not shed a tear. Instead, I reached into the pocket of my gray dress and pulled out a wireless microphone I had requisitioned from the AV crew earlier. I clicked the switch. A piercing whine of audio feedback echoed through the massive speakers, causing guests to cover their ears. The sound abruptly cut off all whispers. I had their undivided attention. "Julienne," I said, my voice amplified and echoing with terrifying clarity. "I want to thank you for that illuminating speech about risk management and preserving core assets. It is fascinating coming from a man who understands absolutely nothing about either." Julian gripped the stone railing, his knuckles turning white. "Elena, turn that microphone off right now. You are embarrassing yourself." I ignored him. Addressing the sea of executives, my husband forgot to mention a minor detail. For the past decade, I have been a senior forensic data analyst and intelligence director. My entire professional existence is dedicated to uncovering fraud, tracking hidden assets, and destroying people who think they are smart enough to steal in the dark. Beatrice stepped forward, panic twisting her face. "Security," she yelled. "Get this trespassing woman out of my house." I held up my hand, silencing her. That brings me to my next point. "Beatrice, you stood up there and claimed you purchased this estate." I held up the eviction notice. "You are evicting me based on a document I signed 2 nights ago. You signed the paperwork." "Elena," Julian sneered, regaining his arrogant posture, "I watched you do it. The deed is transferred. It is over." I reached into my pocket and retrieved the heavy fountain pen. I held it up in the ambient light. "I signed the paperwork with this exact pen." "Julian, do you remember rushing into my office, burying page 52 in a stack of tax documents, hoping I was too exhausted to notice a property surrender agreement?" The crowd murmured loudly. Senior partners exchanged alarmed glances. "I am an intelligence analyst." "Julian." My voice dropped to a deadly whisper over the speakers. "I read every single line of data. I knew exactly what you were trying to do. But I also knew if I refused, you would forge it another way. So I gave you a flawless signature." I turned to Beatrice, whose chest was heaving rapidly. "Tell them. Beatrice, tell your elite friends what happened when you proudly filed that deed at the county recorder's office this morning." Beatrice opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Since she lost her voice, "I will explain," I announced. "This pen is a highly volatile corporate counter-espionage tool. The ink chemically evaporates within 12 hours. When Beatrice handed that legally binding document to the clerk this morning, she handed them a completely blank piece of paper. A collective gasp erupted. A crystal glass shattered on the stone deck. Julian stared at me, all color draining from his face. "You are lying," he stammered. "That is impossible. Call your lawyer." "Julian," I challenged, "ask why the transfer was officially rejected at 9 a.m. There is no offshore trust ownership. You tried to steal a multi-million-dollar compound with a cheap trick, and you failed spectacularly." I took a step closer, forcing them to look down at me. "When we purchased this home, I liquidated my grandfather's trust to pay for 70%. I let you put your name on the deed because I believed in our marriage. But the moment you committed attempted wire fraud against me, I filed an emergency federal injunction. A judge granted a temporary freeze on your equity share. I dropped the manila envelope onto the stone deck. This estate does not belong to Beatrice, and as of today, it no longer belongs to you." This compound is 100% mine. The silence was deafening. The wealthy elite stood paralyzed. Witnessing a brutal public execution, Julian opened his mouth, but his throat seized. Beatrice let out a high-pitched shriek of pure rage. "You little thief!" she screamed. Lunging forward, "You set us up to ruin us." I did not flinch. "I did not ruin you, Beatrice," I replied coldly. "I handed you the shovel, and you dug your own grave." But the property deed was just the appetizer. I turned my gaze back to Julian, who was sweating profusely. I raised the microphone for the fatal blow. "You thought you were a genius. Julian, you forgot one crucial detail. When you invite an intelligence director into your home, you better make sure your digital ledgers are clean. And Julian, your ledgers are stained with filth." I locked eyes with his managing partner. The real show is just beginning. I reached into my pocket and retrieved my smartphone. My thumb hovered over a specialized application. Julian tracked my movement, his eyes darting from my phone to the massive LED projector screen displaying architectural photos. I tapped the screen, overriding the network. The ambient music cut off abruptly. The massive screen flickered to pitch black. A second later, crisp infrared footage flooded the display. The timestamp read 3 a.m. The location was my climate-controlled wine cellar. Julian let out a guttural sound of pure panic. He lunged off the platform, shoving past his mother to reach the AV console, but the network was encrypted. He could not stop it. The massive speakers crackled, broadcasting hushed whispers at maximum volume. The elite crowd watched in stunned silence as black and white versions of Julian and Beatrice crept into the frame. Julian was holding a bypass tool, picking the lock on my biometric vault. "Hurry up and pull the trust documentation and her life insurance binders," Beatrice hissed through the speakers. "We need the exact routing numbers." A wave of revulsion swept the crowd. The managing partner took a slow step backward, his face hardening in professional disgust. On screen, Julian pulled out the documents. "I have them," the digital Julian whispered, photographing the files. "Are you absolutely certain the notary can backdate the transfer?" "Yes," the digital Beatrice replied greedily. "I already established the offshore holding trust. We will bury the property surrender deed inside the annual compliance forms. She will leave here with absolutely nothing." The audio feed was flawless. The real Beatrice stood frozen on the steps, utterly devoid of blood. The high society friends she had spent all evening trying to impress stared at her in unabashed horror. Her polished matriarch persona shattered into a million pieces. She was exposed as a common thief, conspiring to rob a sleeping woman. Julian violently ripped cables from the AV console. Sparks flew, but the projector was wired to a secondary emergency power source I had mandated. The broadcast continued relentlessly. "Turn it off," Julian screamed hysterically. His tailored tuxedo looked absurd on a desperate criminal. He turned to the crowd, waving wildly. "This is manipulated footage. It is a deep fake engineered to ruin me." Nobody believed him. The clarity, the exact layout of the vault, the specific details of the tax filings made the truth undeniable. I stepped forward. "I did not manipulate anything, Julian." My voice projected clearly. "I installed a closed-loop surveillance network to protect my assets from the criminals living inside my house. I let you think you succeeded so you would gather every person whose respect you crave into this space to witness your true character." Marcus pushed his way to the front, staring at the screen, and then at his mother in profound betrayal. The managing partner finally broke his silence. His voice was gravelly and heavy with corporate doom. "Julian," the executive said, stepping forward, You used a bypass key to open a secure vault. You forged property transfers. You conspired to commit wire fraud. If you are willing to orchestrate this deception against your own wife, I have to ask myself a very dangerous question. The executive glared at Julian's panicked face. What exactly have you been doing with my client's money? Julian trembled violently. Sir, he stammered, holding his hands up. My marital issues have nothing to do with my professional conduct. You know my portfolios yield incredible returns. I run a tight ship. You run a pirate ship. Julian, I corrected loudly. I tapped my phone again. The surveillance footage vanished, replaced by a massive, high-contrast spreadsheet. The columns were filled with routing hashes, celebrity client names, and massive deficit figures highlighted in neon red. The managing partner adjusted his glasses, his eyes widening in horror as he recognized the highly confidential escrow accounts. Sir, I am a forensic analyst. I addressed the executive. I ran a data sweep of his network. I found the shadow ledgers. I found the illegal crypto gambling syndicates and the offshore shell companies. Julian lunged toward me, feral rage contorting his face. Shut your mouth, he roared, before he could reach me. Chloe moved with blinding speed. She stepped smoothly between us, shoving Julian backward with a solid palm to his chest. Julian stumbled, crashing into a high-top cocktail table, sending crystal glasses shattering across the stone deck. Do not take another step toward her, Chloe warned. Her voice, a dangerous rumble of righteous anger. Your game is over. You are done bullying people. Julian stared at Chloe, breathing heavily like a cornered animal. He looked at the massive screen displaying his embezzlement. He looked at his weeping mother. He looked at his boss, dialing legal compliance. I stood behind Chloe, entirely victorious. I raised the microphone one last time. You embezzled over $9 million of client funds. Julianne, you stole your sister-in-law's grant money to fund your gambling addiction. You forged quarterly statements. I sent the cloned drives to the authorities yesterday. The analysis is officially closed. Julian completely snapped. He let out a primal scream, grabbed a heavy metal stanchion, and swung it wildly at the projector lens, shattering the glass. Before he could swing again, a sound like thunder erupted from the front of the estate. The massive custom glass double doors were violently breached. A heavy steel ram smashed through the lock. The doors flew inward, shattering against the walls. Federal agents flooded into the foyer and out onto the pool deck in a synchronized wave of tactical gear. The sheer physical presence sucked the air out of the room. They wore heavy Kevlar vests emblazoned with yellow letters: FBI and SEC enforcement. Federal agents, a commanding voice roared over the chaos. Nobody move. Keep your hands visible. The glittering charity gala evaporated into a terrifying federal crime scene. Elite executives panicked. Women screamed and dropped their glasses. Men raised their hands against the walls. The lead FBI agent, a broad-shouldered man with an uncompromising expression, strode directly to the center of the deck, locking eyes entirely on my husband. Julian stood frozen beneath the ruined projector. Dropping the metal stanchion, his arrogant bravado vanished, replaced by the terror of a cornered child. Julian, the lead agent boomed. We have a federal warrant for your arrest. Put your hands behind your back. Julian was paralyzed. He opened his mouth, but only a ragged gasp escaped. Do it now, the agent commanded. Two agents grabbed Julian, spun him around, and slammed him chest first against the stone bar. Cold steel snapped shut around his wrists. Beatrice snapped out of her shock, her entitlement flaring in a spectacular display of delusion. She marched forward, waving a manicured finger at the heavily armed agents. "What do you think you are doing?" she shrieked. "Take your hands off my son. Do you have any idea who we are? I demand to speak to your superior." A stern female SEC agent stepped into Beatrice's path, holding a folded document. "Beatrice," the agent stated flatly, "we have a federal warrant for your arrest as well." Beatrice stopped dead, her jaw dropping. "Arrest me for what? I am a victim here. You are being charged with conspiracy to commit wire fraud, aggravated forgery, and aiding corporate embezzlement." The agent recited. "Give me your hands." Beatrice let out a hysterical wail. She tried to pull away, throwing her own son under the bus instantly. "I know nothing about his fraud. I am a board member of the Art Foundation." The agent hooked her arm and forcefully secured the handcuffs. Beatrice struggled, shredding her remaining dignity in front of her horrified society friends. A dedicated cyber forensic team marched up the floating glass stairs toward Julian's office to seize his hardware. The managing partner approached the FBI agent, thoroughly abandoning Julian. "Officer, I am the senior director of his firm. We had absolutely no knowledge of these unauthorized activities. We will fully cooperate and provide immediate server access. We want him prosecuted fully." Julian heard his boss abandon him. He twisted his neck, his bloodshot eyes filled with absolute despair. He looked past the agents, past his crying mother, directly at me. I stood perfectly still in my gray dress, watching the magnificent operation unfold. I offered him the cold, unyielding stare of an analyst who had successfully neutralized the malware. The agents did not give him a second to process. They marched him out of the estate and shoved him into the back of an armored federal vehicle. Back on the deck, Beatrice was fighting a losing battle, screaming my name, hurling vicious insults, and blaming me for her greed. The agent marched her forcefully toward the shattered front doors. The elite guests who had packed the house fled like rats, abandoning a sinking ship. They scrambled toward the valet, ignoring all social graces to escape the flashing red and blue lights. The charity gala had transformed into a spectacular funeral for their reputations. The mass evacuation left the towering champagne pyramid untouched. An older agent approached me respectfully. "Mom, we must secure the premises and sweep the suspect's office. We have your digital submission, but protocol requires a physical evidence chain." I nodded smoothly. "The office is upstairs. The physical ledgers are inside a biometric vault. I have disabled the security protocols for your team." I turned my attention back to the deck. Marcus stood alone near the infinity pool, shivering in his expensive suit. His mother was gone. His brother was gone. The immense family wealth he relied on had just been seized. He clutched his phone, realizing he was the only one left standing on the sinking ship. Chloe was walking directly toward him. Marcus frantically wiped his face. He lunged forward, grabbing the lapels of Chloe's blazer. "Chloe, do something," he pleaded hysterically. "Call a lawyer, Elena. Just framed my family, we have to get them out." Chloe stood perfectly rigid, letting him clutch her jacket. She looked down at her husband, completely devoid of warmth. "They are not coming back, Marcus," she said, her voice terrifyingly calm. "Julian embezzled millions. Your mother conspired to steal this estate. They are going to federal prison." Marcus stepped back as if struck. "You did this," he screamed at me. "You set them up, Chloe. Defend my family." Chloe reached into her blazer and pulled out a crisp white envelope, holding it toward him. "I am defending my future," she stated, her eyes locking onto his. "But you are no longer part of it." "What is that?" Marcus stammered. "Divorce papers," Chloe replied. "I filed them this afternoon. I already moved my belongings out of the pool house. I am leaving you." Marcus. Right now. Marcus let out a harsh, panicked laugh. You cannot leave me. We are a team. You have nothing without my family's support. Chloe stepped closer, forcing him to face reality. I worked years in underfunded labs to secure that grant. Julian stole my entire future to fund illegal gambling. And you knew about it. Marcus swallowed hard. I did not know. He lied, his voice shrinking. Yes. You did? Chloe countered smoothly. Elena pulled the digital logs. I read the texts you sent Julian 2 months ago. You told him to keep me quiet. You told him I was financially incompetent. You mocked me for asking questions about my own money. Marcus shrank back, his bravado evaporating. I am taking everything back. Chloe continued. Before the agents froze Julian's accounts, Elena and I executed a legally binding recovery protocol. My $250,000 was flagged as stolen property and securely diverted into a protected federal escrow under my name. I got my grant money back, but you get absolutely nothing. What do you mean nothing? Marcus gasped. I am entitled to half we are married. Not anymore. Chloe smiled coldly. You signed several of Julian's fraudulent corporate documents last year to secure your luxury car lease. You willfully tied your identity to their financial crimes. Every asset you possess is being seized by the SEC. Your bank accounts are frozen. Your car will be repossessed tomorrow. You are completely bankrupt. You have no money, no home, and no family left to bail you out. She dropped the divorce papers at his feet. They landed next to the shattered crystal glass. Chloe turned her back on him, walked across the stone deck, and approached me. We did not hug. We exchanged a quiet look of profound mutual respect, two survivors who had successfully burned the predators to the ground. Chloe walked silently out the shattered front doors into the cool California night, leaving Marcus sobbing on the deck, permanently trapped in the ruins of his toxic family. 6 months passed since the federal agents dragged my husband out into the night. The transition from chaos to absolute silence was remarkably swift. Once the government dismantles a criminal enterprise, the machinery moves with unrelenting efficiency. I spent those months assisting federal prosecutors, providing every encrypted ledger and mapped routing hash. My testimony as an intelligence director was bulletproof. The defense attorneys tried to find flaws in my analysis, but the data was absolute. The sentencing hearing took place on a bright Tuesday morning in downtown Los Angeles. The federal courthouse was an imposing structure of granite, a fitting arena for the collapse of Julian's delusion. I sat in the gallery wearing a sharply tailored navy suit. I looked exactly like the executioner who had pulled the lever. When the bailiffs brought Julian in, the physical transformation was shocking. The silk suits were gone, replaced by a standard orange jumpsuit. His arrogant swagger had completely vanished. He looked hollow and utterly defeated. The federal judge showed no mercy. Julian was found guilty of massive securities fraud, wire fraud, and aggravated identity theft. Given his targeting of celebrity escrow accounts, the judge handed down a definitive sentence of 14 years in a federal penitentiary, a lifetime ban from the financial sector, and ordered over $10 million in mandatory restitution. As the guards led him away, he cast one desperate glance at the gallery. He found only the cold, unyielding gaze of the woman he had severely underestimated. Beatrice faced an equally devastating brand of justice. She managed to avoid a lengthy prison sentence by pleading guilty to conspiracy and forgery, receiving 6 years of highly restrictive federal probation. However, the IRS systematically seized every asset connected to her holding company. They levied crushing fines, seized her luxury vehicles, and auctioned off her penthouse. Beatrice, a woman who built her identity around high society galas, was reduced to absolute poverty. She was forced into a tiny, subsidized studio apartment. Her elite social circle completely blacklisted her. She became a total pariah, living the rest of her life in the exact destitution she had gleefully planned for me. Marcus experienced his own catastrophic downfall. Chloe's exit strategy was flawless. With her grant money safely secured in federal escrow, she finalized the divorce with lethal speed. Marcus, having tied his identity to Julian's fraudulent shell companies, had all his accounts frozen. He tried to fight for spousal support, but the judge threw the case out upon reviewing his complicity in the embezzlement cover-up, stripped of his wife, his home, and his stolen wealth. Marcus was forced to work double shifts at a retail electronics store just to make rent with roommates. The toxic family was completely dismantled, their empire crushed under the weight of their own profound arrogance. I walked out of the federal courthouse that afternoon and took a deep breath of clean air. The suffocating weight I had carried since buying the estate was finally gone. I walked down the stone steps, feeling a profound sense of closure. The data was analyzed, the threats neutralized, the network secured. I opened my car door, slid into the leather seat, and smiled. I drove away from the courthouse forever. The drive up the canyon was the most peaceful journey I had experienced in years. The anxiety that used to grip my chest when approaching my property had vanished. The heavy security gates swung open smoothly, welcoming me into a sanctuary that was undisputedly mine. The sprawling glass estate looked different in the warm afternoon sunlight. It simply looked like home. I parked in the driveway and walked around to the expansive infinity pool deck. Sitting around the polished teakwood table were the only two people who had proven their absolute loyalty. Chloe looked up from a stack of medical research blueprints, offering a warm, genuine smile. She wore a sharp, casual blazer, looking rested and firmly in control of her own destiny. Sitting across from her was Victor, the retired military intelligence contractor who had handed me the keys to my salvation. Victor raised his glass of iced tea in a silent toast as I approached. I took a seat at the head of the table, setting my briefcase down. I looked at the two of them with profound gratitude. We were not blood relatives. We were allies forged in the fires of survival. We had all been targeted by the same parasitic family, and we had emerged victorious by trusting each other. How did the sentencing go? Chloe asked, closing her folder. 14 years in federal prison, I replied, leaning back and letting the sun warm my face. Beatrice got 6 years probation and total financial liquidation. The ledgers are officially closed. Victor chuckled. Allo. Raspy sound of satisfaction. I told you. Kid. A man who steals in the shadows is defenseless when dragged into the light. I did not do it alone, I said, looking directly at Chloe. You walked into that Beverly Hills office to clone the master server. You risked your entire future to secure the payload. You saved my life. Chloe shook her head softly. You saved mine. Elena, you kept your promise. My grant is secure. And my new independent research lab opens next month. I am finally free to build my own future. Sitting around that patio table, we were actively planning the expansion of our new corporate venture. 2 months ago, the three of us officially launched a highly specialized corporate intelligence and digital security consulting firm. We combined our unique skill sets to create a defense agency unlike anything in Los Angeles. Victor managed physical security infrastructure. Chloe handled biometric and ergonomic compliance auditing. I served as the chief executive officer and lead forensic analyst. Our client roster was fully booked for the next 2 years. Wealthy executives paid us astronomical retainers to audit their networks and destroy insider threats. We took the trauma Julian inflicted upon us and monetized it into a massively lucrative empire. They tried to leave us broken, but they only gave us the exact tools we needed to completely dominate the industry. I poured myself a glass of iced tea and looked out across the Pacific Ocean. The quiet serenity allowed me to reflect on human relationships. Society conditions us to believe family is an unbreakable bond, defined purely by shared DNA. Julian and his mother weaponized that belief, using the illusion of family loyalty as a smokescreen to commit horrific financial violence. But shared genetics do not grant someone a free pass to exploit your resources or destroy your peace. True family is a conscious daily choice. Family is defined by the people who stand fiercely by your side when the world turns against you. Chloe and Victor were my true family now. We shared a bond forged in absolute trust. When toxic people show you their true nature, believe them the first time. Secure your perimeter. Lock the network. And let them choke on their own malware. My name is Elena. They called me an oblivious, career-obsessed woman. They thought they could strip me of my legacy and throw me onto the street. Instead, I analyzed their entire criminal existence, handed them over to the federal government, and kept the compound they tried to steal. Sometimes the most beautiful karma is simply watching the malware delete itself. Have you ever discovered that the people closest to you were secretly plotting a massive betrayal? How did you confront the toxic individuals who tried to use your silence as a weakness? I want to hear your stories of survival and victory. Share your experiences in the comments below. Hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about setting unbreakable boundaries, recognizing digital red flags, and fighting back against narcissistic abuse. Remember, you hold the encryption key to your own future. Make sure your passwords are secure. The most powerful response to betrayal is building an extraordinary empire without those who sought to destroy you. Stay vigilant. Stay strong. And I will see you in the next video.